As you say, we've been talking with Chris Amon a lot, and for those people who didn't hear Janelle, Chris will be up here at 2 o'clock this afternoon with Murph and me and a couple of others on a panel. You can ask any question you like. We won't answer them, or we'll lie, but you can ask anyway. But we've been listening to Chris for a couple of days now, and we both know him very well. And it's amazing the stories that Chris keeps coming out with, especially with Ian Young as well, who's one of the best New Zealand writers about motorsport. In those days, and we were saying on the way here, in those days the guys seemed to have so much more fun than we do now, or I did, and you now. It's much more restricted in racing now, isn't it? Leaping a couple of generations, of course, at the moment, but it seems to be much... I can imagine us in our dotage talking about motorsport. We won't have the sort of stories they would have.
No, that's exactly right. I mean, I've been fortunate to been around a little while now, and even, you know, I drove my first V8 supercar, known back then as a Group A touring car, in 1995. So there's a few years and a bit of water gone under the bridge since then, and even since that period, you know, the professionalism and the commercial importance of or just the commercial importance has become such a controlling body over everything, and that's just the way things have gone. It's the professionalism of the sport has changed so much that, you know, everyone puts importance on so many more small bits and pieces than what they ever did before, and you've got to respect that, because the job has become a very a professional job. It's not, unfortunately. You know, I can recall going back to even the mid-90s how simple our jobs as race car drivers were, and it meant mainly just turning up on a test day or turning up on the race weekends doing your racing, and then, you know, there was a bit of laugh and a bit of fun on the Sunday nights afterwards, and everyone, you know, got on probably a little bit different than we do now because of the pressures and the strains and the competition, and everyone's fighting for the money and for the dollars to go racing, that, you know, it's not the same environment that it used to be, and maybe not as friendly. The politics of it are getting bigger and bigger and bigger by the day, and that's all due to the fact that everyone wants to have the power to be able to control everything, and not everyone can have that power. So it's you know, listening to Chris and some of the laughs they're having about, you know, maybe spending too much time in the pubs, you know, not too long before each race and bits and pieces. It's, you know, these days obviously that just can't happen. So, you know, I love listening to what he has to say about that, because it, you know, the race cars were beautiful, the race cars were fast, they were incredibly dangerous. And, you know, he lost obviously a lot of friends racing through that period. But now the cars are incredibly safe, they're still incredibly fast. But I suppose the restrictions, but also the demands on the drivers and the teams to uphold a certain performance and, you know, provide their sponsors with returns, that kind of thing, have changed the world of motorsport. But, you know, that's just the way it is.
So when you were growing up and you were getting interested in motorsport, were you aware of those guys, the Amon, Holm, McLaren, and people like that from New Zealand going away racing? Did you follow their careers, or? No,
listen, I probably was a bit ignorant to all that, you know, when I was younger. But I mean, I knew Chris, and you know, I knew about him because I was 1991, 92. I was based at Manfield in Fielding at the racetrack there. Working for Richard Lester, doing driving school duties, and Chris would be there, I don't know how many days a week with Toyota doing testing with the Toyota road cars. And I mean, obviously became very synonymous with Toyota, and still is, and you know, has his name on many Toyotas throughout that era. And he was there a lot, and I remember sitting up in the grandstand at lunchtime watching him, you know, day after day after day, doing lap after lap after lap, and evaluating those cars. And so I became very familiar with him, and, you know, would talk to him a fair bit, and he always had, you know, fantastic advice, and would always offer advice about anything that you wanted to talk to him about. So, you know, I knew a lot about him, and, you know, you knew the name McLaren and all that kind of stuff, and you knew bits and pieces about it. But I think as I've got older, I've become a lot more interested in that history, and because what they did and the cars they drove are just beautiful. You know, I think the Can-Am cars of the 60s and the 70s and those Formula One cars are without doubt the most beautiful race cars that were ever produced, and I've become more of a passionate about that kind of stuff as I've definitely got older. So it might be just an age thing, but I love standing upstairs watching in the museum upstairs, the display up there, which is phenomenal. I really advise you all, if you get a chance, to go and have a look. But you know, the stuff that was around in those years. You know, you really have to appreciate what they were actually doing at the time.
Right.
Our life's a lot easier now in respect of the safety side of things and bits and pieces.
And we talked about your father, obviously. Were your parents a great influence on your choice of career? What else would you have done if you didn't become a motor race driver, professional?
I was very confused throughout my later years at high school, and you know, I was obviously still racing karts a lot, and you know, you go and see the careers advisor and talk to them, and nothing that they that came up on my the charts. You know, you fill out the forms and they come up with what they think you should be, and I can't remember what that was at the time, but it certainly didn't fit with what I had in mind. And I applied for the Air Force actually in 1990, my 7th form year. Applied for the Air Force, and I wanted to be a pilot. Aviation's another one of my absolute passions. I love helicopters, love aeroplanes, love all things to do with it. And so I applied for the Air Force. And I went to a final selection hearing up at Whenuapai that August. It was August 1990, and went through all the aptitude testing and all that kind of stuff. And there was some pretty full-on tests that needed to be done. And at the end of those 3 days up at Whenuapai, I got taken into a room to go through all your test results and bits and pieces. And it was suggested that maybe I didn't have the reaction skills required to be a pilot, and I should look at possibly being a navigator. And that didn't sit very well with me at all, so that was the end of my Air Force aspirations. A month later, I won the Shell Scholarship at Manfield, and that determined pretty much the direction I was heading. So I had no plans. As I say, the whole car racing thing, it just didn't work for us because we weren't associated or connected enough. We didn't know the right people. We didn't know anything about sponsorship, really, all that kind of stuff, and it was going to be very difficult. So to have that, my career path chosen for me by doing the scholarship I was very lucky. But you know, as far as my parents go, I've always been incredibly supportive of the whole thing, and you know, it's been an important part of going forward.
It's amazing you didn't have the reactions to be a pilot, but you became a race car driver.
There's not a lot of similarity.
Actually, that explains a lot.
Similar.
I've got to say, that explains quite a lot. Yeah.